Jesus is saying, you are salt and you are light. You are never just for yourself. This whole thing, this kingdom, this is not for selfish gain. This is so that you can be with and for and love other people radically. So Matthew 5:13, let's jump in. Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. I like salt. I think all of us like. I haven't met anyone who's like, salt? No. But we have to ask ourselves, what does salt do? But also, why was it so important in the ancient Near East? Because we can talk about salt in the modern day, but why was it so important back then? So here's a small list of physical and spiritual attributes of salt. Hang with me on this. The first one you have definitely heard in a sermon before. Salt keeps things from perishing. Before refrigeration, if you're walking in biblical times and you are blessed enough to receive some meat, the first thing you do is you salt the heck out of that thing so that it's preserved and you can eat it. And you can share it with your family. It literally kept things from going bad. It kept food from perishing. It was a hot commodity. Roman soldiers were even paid in salt. They used salt as currency. And then rewind even further, and more importantly, spiritually, in Exodus 30:35, Yahweh is talking to Moses and he says, hey, season the oil for sacrifice, that's important, with salt. And he goes on, to make it pure and holy. Not just to preserve it physically or to make it better for anointing the sacrifice, but to make it pure and holy. And so the hearers of this sermon would have been like, salt holds a lot more weight than Morton salt in the grocery aisle. Next, salt enhances what is hidden. It enhances what was there. I grew up eating Mormon casseroles, which were great in their own respect. There's one, actually, that I still crave. It was like a chicken broccoli. It was on repeat in my household, always. But then I had a spiritual awakening. I married into a family that makes their own salsa from scratch and presses their own tortillas. And my life just changed. We talk about Mexican food a lot at Restoration, but we can agree that when Mexican food is properly salted, it doesn't just become salty, it enhances every other ingredient in there that was yet hidden. Abraham knows what I'm talking about. He sells and makes tamales that are very good. So we know that. So by Jesus calling his followers salty, he is saying our very presence, your very presence, should draw out the best in others. You being around people should make them feel good, if I can just say it as simply as that. You should draw out the best attributes in others, definitely not the worst. Lastly, salt is meant to be scattered. It's meant to go far and wide. Salt should never be clumped up in one spot. It is meant to be everywhere. For instance, if your kids pulled a prank on you, let's say you're having like chicken noodle soup for dinner, and your kids unscrewed the salt shaker, and then you go to pour salt in your soup, and the whole salt shaker goes in your soup, you throw the soup away. It ruins it. It's not good anymore. Jesus said, salt, is meant to go to the ends of the earth. Christians are meant to do the same. We're to be missional in nature. We are not supposed to stay in the same place with the same people in the same bubbles always. Hear me on this. I like a good holy huddle. I love fellowship. I love when we all get together. But if that's all we did, we're getting half of the gospel correct. Okay? Salt is meant to be scattered. It has to be. And then a question is raised by Jesus, which is a really weird question. We can't really understand it with Western modern ears. And he says this in 13, but if salt should lose its taste, how could it be made salty? It's no longer good for anything but to be thrown out and trampled. And we read that and we go, how is it possible to have not salty salt? How is it possible to bring salt home and pour it on our food and taste nothing? I thought salt couldn't lose its taste. I thought that's what sodium chloride was, is it's just a taste. We got to go back to context. So in the ancient Near East, salt wasn't always pure like we buy today. It was often collected from places like the Dead Sea. There's a lot of it there. And it was mixed with minerals that were not pure like we have today. And it was stored in ways where moisture could actually leach out the sodium chloride in it. So follow this. What could happen? The true salt content dissolves, and what remains looks like salt, but has no taste and no preserving power. So that means that I can look like salt and actually not be salty, that I can have the appearance of salt, but no essence of salt. What is Jesus saying to me here? He's saying, Christian, that can happen to you. You can, I'm going to speak in I can carry the name. I can speak the language. I can show up in spaces and teach a sermon and slowly lose the distinct preserving presence of God in my life. I can look exactly like salt and fool everyone but myself and God. I've been there. I've done that. I've told someone to go do one thing and read one verse and gone and done the opposite myself. We can look like salt and not be salty. And it's a warning from Jesus. He says, if you are this way, you should just be kind of trampled. You are salt. Notice that. A man named Rich Viotis, he says this, one phrase, it packs a punch. He says, you can't know God and be a stranger to yourself. This is the theme of the whole Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is challenging, as you're going to see this in the coming weeks, Jesus is challenging us to look inside, to observe our inner life and ask, how does this line up with his kingdom? And for some people, they're asking, for the hearers of this sermon, are asking themselves that for the first time. But this highlights a truth. To know God and be a stranger to yourself is to be a Christian who is full of word and information, yet totally unaware of your behavior. And I think that is that's a terrible combo. Yes, we have to deny self. Yes, we have to crucify our flesh, but we must know what it is we are denying before we deny it. We must know what aspects of my flesh, what perpetual sin that I find myself in order to crucify it. So if all I am full of is the word of God and no deed, I actually don't know myself. And Jesus is saying, I'd like you to observe both. Paul talks about this all the time to the church in Corinth. He uses this phrase, examine yourself. He says, examine yourself before you come to the table, before you eat of the bread, before you drink of the wine. He goes on, this is an exact quote, he says, examine yourself to see whether you are in the faith. He's saying that to a group of believers. Examine yourself. Examine yourself. Now, let me give you a caveat. I do believe, maybe you've heard this saying, that self-analysis is paralysis. That if all I'm doing is just going to therapy and looking at my family of origin and reading all the books and I'm armed with these facts about myself, that's good and fine. I think that's wonderful. I have done those things. But for every one look I take at myself, I should be taking 10 looks at Christ. There's a tension here. There's both things. I need to know where I'm falling short. I need to know where I'm asleep at the wheel. And I do that by examining myself and looking at Jesus. And some of us were one or the other. And I think we're supposed to do both. Enough about salt. Jesus goes on and he talks about another you are. And he calls us light. Join me in verse 14. Let's see what he says. He says, you are the light of the world. A city situated on a hill cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket, but rather on a lampstand and gives light to all who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. So we are salt. We are light. The prophet Isaiah spoke, And he said, I will make you as a light for the nations, that my salvation may reach the ends of the earth. Lord spoke through Isaiah. He said, I will make you. I will make you. And here Jesus says, you are the light. One is future tense, now it's present. You are light. Why are we light? Because Jesus is there and he's the one saying that. You are already light. Isaiah was correct. So do not hide this under a basket, he says. In fact, when you don't hide this from anyone, others will glorify God. This does not mean be very religious in front of religious people. This does not mean be pious. This does not mean look good on the outside. It means recognizing that you are light first and foremost, and devoting your life to him, and giving your life to Jesus as King and Lord over your life. That should operate, or that should change the way that you operate. When someone is this way, when someone is really carrying the light and not just checking off boxes, you can feel it. This is my measure. When someone is doing this and you spend time with them, all you can think about is how awesome Jesus is. My friend Matt Spilsbury, he did announcements here this morning, and I'm going to put him on the spot just like I did in the last service. But I love Matt. I really enjoy our conversations. I think we had coffee for the first time 5 years ago. We honestly didn't talk about anything crazy or in particular. We got to know one another. We shared testimonies. But all I could think about when I was meeting with Matt and after I met with Matt is, man, Jesus is so incredible. Because he's a light and he's not hiding it from anyone. Example 2, this last week, Katie and I were in Los Angeles, and one of my favorite modern Christian authors wrote a book of poetry, and he invited people to come to this. He didn't invite people. That sounds weird. I bought a ticket to go. He invited. No, he didn't. I bought a ticket to go see this dude read poetry and get his book and all of this, and Katie was kind enough to go with me. We visited a friend out there. It was a good trip. Anyways. We go in, and I see him, and I got some like mild idolatry happening in my heart, and I'm like fanboying, or like is that the term where I'm like, oh my, he's there, like I'm gonna have him sign my book. But what happened as the night went on, as he prayed and he read his poetry, and then halfway through, all I could think about is how awesome Jesus was, and it wasn't about him. Though he's skilled and he's a great author, all I could think about is how awesome Jesus was, and you could just feel the peace of the Lord in the room. The light of the world. What else does light do? Light illuminates, light reveals. Light also purifies, much like salt. Light extinguishes darkness. But I'd like us to look at the similarities and why Jesus stacked salt and light. Why are salt and light together? What do salt and light have the most in common? What is the common denominator? I'm going to put it on the screen. It's this. It's that salt and light do not exist to serve themselves. Salt and light, tongue twister, exist to glorify. That's their whole point. This is a little philosophical, but hang with me. Without something to illuminate, what does light even matter? Lights will show us a chair in the room so that we don't trip and fall on our face, but the chairs won't show us the light. We need the light in order to be served to see the chair. Without food to preserve or enhance, what is salt? If I have this wonderful meal, this Mormon casserole, and it's unsalted and it needs salt, and the salt is a centimeter away from the plate, it holds no function. It doesn't matter. It exists to serve others. It exists to glorify. So when Jesus is saying you are salt and you are light, you are never just for yourself. This whole thing, this kingdom, this is not for selfish gain. This is so that you can be with and for and love other people radically.